Welcome again to Mass Timber March Madness. I'm pleased to have Bruno Heim of Nordic Structures giving a presentation on Nordic Structures business as well as mass timber in Canada. And additionally, I think internationally, I've known Bruno for many years. He has experience in Switzerland, in the US, in Canada, at multiple companies, and is an ideal voice, in my view, just to give us a perspective on where the industry is and where it's going. So please, Bruno, begin your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Greg, for providing this platform and organizing them. I've had a chance to listen into a few, not to all of them. My name is Bruno Heim, and I'm happy to give you an overview of Nordic Structures and the Nordic family. Thanks for being here. I'm going slightly off track here first. Just a few weeks ago, I had the chance to do a site visit on a job site in Virginia, and I was, walking this mass timber structure, 6-story building that's going up, the largest mass timber structure in the state of Virginia. And I was just, again, it was amazing to see all the, the big columns, the girders, and the CLT panel go in, and how fast it's going up. I mean, this is just a small wing you see here. It felt so good to smell wood again, mainly in these times where we kind of feel like we're locked at home. But it also made me reflect kind of where my whole thing started with CLT and mass timber. Just and I remember not as fancy. This is a little sketch I found in one of my old binders from 1989. I was a young carpenter apprentice, and my master carpenter made me build a wooden wheelbarrow. And we had this beautiful new sheets around 2 meter wide, 5 meter long, these CLT panels about 1 inch thick, and we didn't really know what to do with them and how to use them. But I remember we used them for the box instead of gluing up the panels. It was such a game changer for us back then, utilizing this stuff and the material. We could rip it down on the panel saw, make long strips, and still be very stable and straight. It was just very exciting. It still is today to me. Just in a much, in a bigger scale. Anyway, I just wanted to show you this to you. So how is a Nordic Structure part of this? We are a family-owned business. We are in the 3rd generation, and it originated out of a traditional sawmill operation in the early 60s. To date, we have 4 main companies. We have 2 sawmills. The main mill in Chibougamau, Chantier Chibougamau, is our main mill. We have in Landrin another sawmill. And then we're not just a mill, a sawmill operation. We're also providing with Nordic Craft fiber. So we provide power. We have a power plant. We provide about 32 megawatts of power. And then as fourth, we have Nordic Structures in there, who utilizes all the beautiful material and what we produce, right? Within our company structures, we have 4 core divisions. We have our pre-construction and sales divisions. We have our technical services, who make sure we're up to date on the code, on product certifications. We make sure that we develop new products and research into those products. It's very important. In addition, we have our engineering and drafting department, where we do our traditional engineering. We do find solutions. We do make our shop drawings. We have our design department. And we have the division who manages all the installations, the logistics behind, make sure the field directions go smoothly. Geographically, we are in Canada, in Quebec. Our main technical part, engineering design, is in Montreal, in downtown Montreal, as our office. And our mills, they're roughly 8 hours north, where the fiber is. Back to Nordic structure, how do we typically engage in our mass timber designs or general heavy timber designs is through design assist. We can utilize the value engineering perfectly. Our strength is designing around our fiber, designing around the strength of our fiber. So we have about 60 of our staff in Montreal who during the pre-design can give our input, our professional engineers who can give us input design. We also have project managers. So we look ourselves as full solution provider. Very important, looking at project holistically, parallel, making sure if a project is running, we have cost under control with potential cost creeps. We can make sure we're sensitive about that, or schedule creeps is really important to have that aspect controlled. So that's our team in Montreal. I'm going back up north to our mills. What do we harvest? We harvest roughly on, and where do we harvest? We harvest roughly on 10 million acres in northern Quebec. It's the 11th largest FSC certified forest. And our primary species is black spruce, spruce pine fir. And we have a little bit of jack pine and balsamic fir that's in there, very minimal. The climate is harsh, right? So our trees, they only grow to 80 to 120 years. So it's a short life cycle. And the average diameter is very small, 4.5 inches. So think about that. That's a small diameter log that we need to process. So look at the picture. This is a logging truck, a typical logging truck, how it comes in, right? This is mass timber, looks very different for us than maybe on the West Coast in different forests. Our trees are, like I said, are very small, so we need to utilize our resources, very much to the end. Every spec we need to utilize. We need to run, the trees fast because we need to touch a lot of trees. So, but because we have such a short growing season, of only 50 to 60 days in our forest, our fiber is very dense. So we can then easily keep up with the duck firs and all those species. So that's what we harvest. That's what we log. What do we produce out of it? Well, besides the solid sawn, we have our glue laminated timber. We call it the Nordic Lam, Nordic Lam Plus. We have our I-joist line, and we produce our cross-laminated timber since 2010. Specifically about the glue lam, trying to see if that top is going away. The glue lam manufacturing, you see a picture of our plant with the machines in the background. So we can produce large sections. We can also machine large sections. You see the machinery behind. Very important, again, as a shop that produces solutions. We go all the way through. We want to make sure we're efficient, not just producing the fiber. We also are efficient in machining the fiber and shipping it. So that approach is very important on the material we produce. As far as the grade, you see it's 24F. the sizes, you name it, it's big, it's huge. It can be straight, it can be arched, curved. As far as the glue line, we also have a decking line that is 1.5 inches thick to 3.5 thick. That's an engineered glue line decking. And it's a shiplap on the edge treatment. Comes in 8, 12, or 16-inch widths, right? So that's our glue line production. For the CLT line, we produce an E1 grade consistently. And we're an 8-foot panel shop, can go up to 64 feet in length. Typically, there's other constraints in producing that or shipping it, we all know. As far as thicknesses go, there's plenty of choice on the 3, the 5, the 7, and the 9 ply. You pick it and we make it. Just you see on the right, I mean, our wood is a brighter wood, is a lighter wood. The spruce comes out, has a lighter picture, has a knot pattern. You see that? So that's the characteristics of our wood, right? Important for us to connect, to timber in as we expand our engineering adventures. We need to connect all these timbers. Very important to have our own steel fab shop. So we have at our plant we have an additional metal fab shop where we have our plasma cutting, and in the end all our parts are powder coated that connect steel to steel. So we not just we design them in-house, we engineer them in-house, we also fabricate them. And sometimes you need to pre-fit these parts. It can get very complicated, as we can see in the picture. Beautiful, showing there. As a family-owned business, these certifications are very important to us. They're not just here to collect them and put them in a binder and have them up on our website. These green and sustainability certifications are important to us as a company, to us as a family. We have not just a social responsibility in our area overall. We also have environmental responsibility to make our products, as healthy as possible. I think that's a very important factor. We have all you see the names, the EPA, the EPD, FSC certifications, the health, and the red list free. So our material is red list free of any chemicals and harm. We substituted any formaldehyde glues a while back already, and we're pursuing a cradle-to-cradle certification that we should have anytime soon. This is an important aspect of our operation to have and to be up to date, with all our materials. So it's important. Where do we have our projects? This is a little map of where our projects have been, and we're tucked a little bit to the top right, but we're growing out into in the U.S. I mean, we're putting in dots in Texas, in California. Each bigger dots represents 10 plus projects. Just to give you an overview. Wherever it makes sense as a project, wherever it makes sense for us to reach it, logistically, we look at projects. So it's for us nice to have a radius that way. In addition, we have access to train. We have train access into our manufacturing facility, so we can utilize and ship by train what can be much more efficient, much more environmentally friendly. It's a nice aspect to have. It doesn't always have to work out that way, but it's good to have as a solution and utilize the training. These are some of the projects. So I'm giving you a few overview on projects, what we have done in the past. This is a very large project in Quebec, in Quebec City. It was basically a commercial project, a public project, so of large scale. We are engaging some of these, and it was creating the facets around the ice hockey stadium, a brand new ice hockey stadium built, created about 92 facets with these glulam timbers who were very large in the arch. It's kind of hard to see, but they were about 5 meters apart. So that was a unique challenge, and integrating glulam into a traditional steel structure and showing the beauty of it and cladding it on the outside. Very similar, the training facility for the Buffalo Sabres. Interesting story here. I mean, this was originally designed as traditional steel, 9-foot steel beam going across, and just having the beauty and integrating the beauty of the wood into the structure. I think, just want to make you watch a hockey game or play hockey here, actually, if you feel like. I want to point out the collar tie integrated into the the bottom court there. Massive steel tie, but that's the combination of the wood structure playing out its strength where it makes sense, but then utilizing other materials where it makes more sense and connecting them, and finishing them up with purlins and a decking on top of it. It's a beautiful example of utilizing the strength of the fiber and the engineering, not being afraid to go dive deep into engineering techniques. The next one is another beautiful example of that, not being afraid of looking at challenges. Soccer stadium in Montreal, another public project, and just look at the bottom left of this beam, right? There's a reason why there's 3 cranes on it, not because they didn't have a big enough crane, but the beam itself is 227 feet long, right? It's one big glulam beam. It's about half a meter deep, so 20 inches deep, and it's almost 14 feet tall. So, look at your ceiling height, 9-foot ceiling height in your room. I mean, that's a big piece of wood as a main carrier beam, and then it's obviously stabilized again. You see the cross bracing underneath with purlins and the decking. I mean, these are engineering challenges that we love to do. We love to engage, where again we can provide a solution that makes sense, hopefully all the way around. We come to a more traditional mass timber project. This is still one of the largest, or the largest, up in Montreal. This was roughly, or is 600,000 square feet, 334 units, a couple 6-story buildings and a couple 9-story buildings. The interesting part here was the grid was put in place first, and the layout of the units was made around it, right? I think that type of approach, you really then can utilize the strength of mass timber completely, right? You can fine-tune the details, you can fine-tune your material choices, and it shows fine-tuning your installation when you install a 6 or 9-story building in 12, 16 weeks. So that's was, besides the structure itself, an exciting experience. Sometimes even for crews are not that experienced with mass timber, but you know, seeing that type of speed is exciting. Another just engineering marvel in a sense is this project, again outside Montreal in Nordic, 12-story mass timber over you know, over a podium on a very challenging site, right? We had a 10-foot water table and an earthquake area, so there's really no other way to build it in wood from, you know, from a weight perspective. Bringing in a traditional concrete structure would be too heavy on a 10-foot water table. I mean, this allowed us to go vertical in full mass timber combined with, you know, engineered with glue line product in there for lateral stability. I mean, you know, incredible, right? So here in the US, University of Massachusetts, another building we have done, the first university building in the US, mass timber. Leros Weinzapfel won many design awards with it. A wonderful, wonderful project with a lot of details. If you go on our website, nordic.ca, you'll see many more details, many more views. You know, just beautifully looking building to see. University of Michigan, we see a niche in the university buildings. This was you know, done recently. We just finished out before COVID kind of went crazy, right? Didn't stop us. Like I said, those type of building, these type of buildings surrounding universities seem to be, you know, attractive, and you know, there's quite a niche in there. Some people maybe have seen this structure, Plat 15 in Denver. Beautiful design structure. And I think this proves that mass timber can easily compete with other systems. With you know, it's important that we not just look at the mass timber as a solution, but we look at the, you know, the long range for developers and, you know, how they're getting the return. There's always the discussion, but it has shown that it has the highest leasing rate in the city. We have heard it's wonderful. I mean, who wouldn't want to work in one of these spaces? And if you had a choice, you know, there's a building on this side of the street and there's a building like this. So just, you know, it's an interesting aspect to see that actually mass timber can compete on the market. I'm getting close to the end of the projects. One of the last one is this one, first mass timber project in the city of San Francisco, right? We just topped off a few months ago. On the right, you see the model, you know, the rendering. On the left, you see when we're installing it. You see on social media some more cool pictures and flybys, but it's important to leave a footprint in every city and show the beauty of you know, of the wood and what kind of space we can create. It's just nice. So hopefully you will see us in your neighborhood. This is a future project we're going to be working on. It's currently on hold due to COVID, but California College of the Arts, Jeannie Gang. So with this slide, I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening in, and let me show you a little bit about the Nordic family, and I kick it back to Craig, and if there's anybody who wants to do anything, go ahead, we can chat about it.
Thank you, Bruno. Amazing projects, massive background. Great to see all those divisions and understand how complementary they are. There are a few questions, but I have one myself. you're unusual in that you've worked in Europe, you've worked in the US, you worked in Canada, you've worked at multiple companies, including ones that were not specifically focused on mass timber. So you can offer a multi-decade perspective on the growth in prefab in wood and internationally. Can you elaborate more on your background even prior to Nordic Structures?
Sure. Yeah, I think I go back to, maybe my first slide, the wheelbarrow, right? That was the start. Utilizing new technologies. I think back in the late 80s, the timber construction in Europe, the heavy timber world was like in a midlife crisis, I feel like. And that's my personal perspective. But when I started as carpenter apprentice, we still traced all hips and valleys on our floor in the shop. So really, the shop size and what they can do was driven by how big is your floor, and you can trace your hips and valleys on the floor and trace them on the piece of wood. Well, then we realized there's new technologies in the early 90s with a CAD system and new engineered wood systems. Combined with these crazy CNC machines, suddenly somebody made, and it created this dynamic where I remember talking to my master carpenter. He was like, "Well, I will never install a framed roof that's cut by some machine, right? And how is that going to work?" But the reality was, it was here 2 years later we received the first pre-cut roof done on the first CNC machines, and yes, we had some birth mouths that were cut wrong, and sure enough, he elaborated those. But I think, long story short, it created such a huge dynamic, and that's when mass timber or the whole wood industry gained so much traction. And what was a key changer, in my opinion, was when the architects and the developers started design to the system that was most efficient, because it just exploded at that point. And as a system provider, you were not anymore competitive. You were cutting individual pieces on your shop and then bringing them out to the field and erecting them. You had to prefab, you had to panelize. That came next. It was just because you had the tools to do it, you had the tools to calculate it, you could make your shop drawings efficient. Your efficiency in the shop is so much more. So that just took over in Europe. And then when I came to the US in the early 2000s, it was a very similar dynamic again, kind of 15, 20 years later in the US. Here we were using these European machines, but we were kind of trying to sell the timber frame look and feeling, but we're cutting on these fast machines and designing at CNC machines. And the rest is it took off from there. So I feel that's the CAD, the new technologies, and the CNC machines were absolute catapult for this industry to take off, I feel like. And it's still going.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'll ask some of the questions from the audience. The first one is from Tanya Luti. For the 12-story mass timber outside Montreal, what was the lateral system?
As far as I know, there was integrated glulam structures creating the lateral system, and I don't know all the details of the engineering, but it was a full mass timber. So it was connecting CLT to glulam portions and sections like lateral shaft.
Okay, and then a question from Nitin Ayer. As you look ahead to the next 3 to 5 years, what are the big challenges you see to mass timber adoption? And what are the areas where mass timber will take off?
Well, I think we need to separate out the market acceptability. And, we already had some of these presentation of, jurisdictions are going to need to follow the trends. And so it's going to take a little time. It already has taken, a little bit of time. I think those are going to be the biggest challenges. As far as the opportunities I see is in the commercial side, it's a little bit different dynamic, and we had this in North America than in Europe. North America, it really goes right into commercial buildings, where I see opportunities and continue the opportunities to grow. Not as much as in the residential, not because it's not there, it's simply a different market dynamic, I think, that plays out versus Europe, where it really came from. Hope that answers the question.
Sure. And another question from Mark Wigston. How did you ship the 200-foot long beam to the Montreal soccer stadium?
No, it was actually two pieces. So there's a splice in the middle of the beam. So it was actually spliced in the field. So with massive screws going in there, and so it was two pieces.
Okay, and then, from Frank Weeks, I'm wondering if you can give some insight on transporting huge beams. What are the limitations? Are they spliced?
Yeah, I mean, if you go huge, right, you physically can't transport them. You need to look at your limits to go from A to B, and then you splice them with, we have seen some new technology that you could splice, whether it's in the field efficiently, but it's definitely an engineering challenge to have something spliced in the field and splice it, efficiently and to the satisfaction of the engineers, right? But yes, that's really the approach you need to take.
Here's a question from Stefan Schneider. Hey, Bruno, great presentation and amazing projects. Question is, most of these projects require long planning phases, often years from first proposal to execution. Meanwhile, material prices are going up almost daily. How is Nordic dealing with that on such a big scale?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. And hi, Stefan. We're harvesting our own fiber, right? So we're not as exposed to these fluctuations as maybe other mills are, or producers are, that need to purchase their stock, right? So it's definitely an aspect to watch for and to be sensitive about. But for us as a company, we're not as exposed to these crazy fluctuations because we have our own fiber that we can harvest.
Okay, and a question from Luciano. He asked, what are the most important features on the CN machines nowadays? And I would add to that, since you have a Swiss and Canadian and US perspective at multiple companies, how are you seeing C machines in general? How many more are coming in and how you're using them?
You mean the CNC processors, right? We're talking about. I think first and foremost, you always need to understand what are you really processing. What is your strength of your shop? I think it was mentioned before. It's a little bit like the sneaker. I think Stefan actually mentioned that. What are you doing with? Are you going outside running, or are you, climbing mountains? So you need to understand what is your final product. What are you trying to process? What sizes you need to go, and then I'm sure you'll find the right fit for your needs in the CNC machine world. They're all really good now, and it's amazing what they can do.
I think this is related to that. Here's a question from Frank Weeks. Any thoughts on mass timber commodities in North America? Will we see CLT in Home Depot anytime soon?
I'm not saying I don't foresee that. I don't look at mass timber as a commodity. I think that's where I think we need to be as a industry. We need to be careful to provide solutions all the way. If we treat it as a commodity, I think we need to protect the industry. Even the naming mass timber. Everybody has a responsibility to provide a solution. There's one thing if we have a sheet good that is a mass timber or a CLT product, that's different. And I wonder myself why that's not available sometimes in Home Depot. I would love to have access to it. But for the bigger stuff, me personally, I see the need that actually the industry provides solution. And that's what will drive the industry forward to get traction into new worlds that we maybe don't even know where we can go into.
Yeah, and I have another question myself. Again, I don't hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but you've worked for decades at what I'll call prefab building companies, decades even in the US and Canada. You've seen some be very successful, some not be successful, booms and bust. And now you're at Nordic, and I think you're probably drowning in demand right now. And my question would be, if we have successful projects that come in closer to budget and on schedule, what advice would you kind of give architects, engineers, general contractors, real estate developers, how to make projects successful so the whole industry thrives and mass timber is more successful? Can you just, I know this is very top level, but
Yeah, no. Well, I think it starts with designing to the system, right? I think like Arbor was a perfect example. Sometimes you got to flip the the storybook and go around, okay, well, where's the system strength to really fully utilize it? And if you first put in, a grid and then design your, units around it, for example, that was there, that created the efficiencies that are just, multiplying throughout the process. Because a lot of times we just think about we just think about our layout, we think about our structural components, we think about our installation, but what really separates the system by itself, and we're not quite, I feel like we're not as an industry there yet, like the steel industry, who has standardized details, who has standardized materials. We still produce, everybody produces a little bit different materials, different thicknesses. That's okay. But going in that direction, that you kind of flip the script and actually design towards a system, that's where opportunities will generate even to a higher level. And it will generate efficiencies throughout the entire process of the build and the life cycle of a building.
Oh, I think, no, thank you. That's a great top-down view, but given how busy the construction industry is, it's kind of hard to find time to engage with people who are busy on the front lines like you are.
Right. It is hard. It's I think we have I come back. There's maybe a responsibility of the industry to be, and there's maybe a holistic approach that we could take as all producers to look at those aspects and just I think that's important. It is in the daily routine. Yes, that's hard, no doubt, for everybody, right?
And here's another bigger question, one I discussed with Stefan. I mean, let's look at Switzerland, where maybe about 10% of buildings are considered to be wood framed, yet there are many mass timber, the supply chain is pretty large. And then you look at the size of the market for wooden buildings in Canada and the US. Isn't there, how much massive room for growth do you think exists in the North American market?
Well, that's where me personally, I'll be a little hesitant to take the European market and compare it to the North American market. I think there's just a different history, there's a different dynamic. I think the European has grown out of the residential because it's so dynamic. You can kind of do your own thing and experiment. We had our sheet good, and we just kind of glued them up and made, big pieces of 2-inch-and-1/8 panels and made horse stalls, and just kind of, all right, well, it kind of works and it's kind of strong enough. But that's a different dynamic in Europe that's creating its own dynamic and kind of market, and has been. In North America, it's a little different. It's hard to. There's definitely huge demand. It's just the market dynamics, I feel, are different in the short and in the long run. I think we have to keep an eye on that.
Okay, and then here's a question from Michael Bowe. Are there unmet technical needs? If so, are they material, like adhesive water protection, or IT software or engineering?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Are there unmet needs? Are there things problems the industry still needs to solve?
Well, I think, yeah, Yes, good question. I think the very fundamental need is that we need to educate young talent to really get them excited about these products, right? I think it's not as cool to work in the field and install mass timber structures still than do other than be in program something else. But we need to find and educate and train talent and apprenticeship programs to have the talent, the members to install these incredible buildings, because it needs really professional experience to do so. I think that's going to be our biggest challenge moving forward, because there is going to be an increase in demand, but we're going to need to have the talent in the field who really understands what is wood. Wood is not the piece of steel that just kind of is uniform. So I see actually that as the biggest challenge, going back into your shop, even having talent to design in wood and understand what the characteristics are.
Well, great. Well, thank you. I know you're, as I said, extremely busy guy. Nordic Structures has projects all over Canada, the US. But what would you recommend just to the general audience watching live and in the future when this is on YouTube? How do people keep track of Nordic Structures? How do they keep track of Bruno and the industry if they want to stay at the edge?
Well, it's amazing, the social media, right? You can find us on all the normal social media platforms. We're not super present on these. We're kind of sometimes a little bit more in the background, but yes, you'll find us on the typical social media platforms. Same with me personally. If you want to reach out through me, feel free. LinkedIn, I'm not every day on it, but that's probably the best, just as a general platform to find me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think that's our questions. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for everybody. Thanks.
Great to see you again. And as I tell everyone, I'll try to have this presentation up maybe by the weekend if I have time. But thank you again, Bruno.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good day. Thanks. Ciao.
Ciao.